Well, church family, happy Sabbath. It's good to see you. Guys, did you guys survive the storm this week? Nothing bad happened, I hope. Here on Thursday, I got to the church and Shelby, the school principal, called me and said, hey, listen, when I was driving by, I saw that a huge tree had fallen on our parking lot. And I went there and it took most of the access to the lower parking lot. And we had someone coming in and cutting it all off and everything. So we had some excitement this weekend. But I hope you guys were safe, Just want to wish you guys all a happy Sabbath. I'm glad you're here. I've been praying for you the whole week. So I'm happy that you were able to be here this morning. So this morning, I want to talk to you about something I kind of like, It's art. Do you like art? I want to talk about art with you. Even those who don't fully understand art can appreciate a beautiful painting like this one, right? Even if you don't understand it, it's still beautiful. Or you might like some sculptures, and you can appreciate the sculptures, the beauty of it, and the details. Or maybe you might marvel on the works of an artisan's hands. I personally, I'm not very artistic at all. I've never been. All my drawings were like, stick figures and weird cars like this. This is me drawing, this is just, I took it, last night. This is how I draw, right? But I can definitely appreciate good art. However, those arts, that modern arts, I don't quite understand. I do appreciate the colors, but I don't understand, how you can look at something for like hours and try to find a meaning. I like better the arts, they have more details, they're more realistic. They have expressions, the different lightings that come to it, composition. I like those. I can look at them for hours and appreciate everything. I love when art has certain stories to tell. Something that helps me understand the artist who painted it. And I think it's beautiful. But like I said, I'm not very artistic. But I do have someone in my family who was very artistic, who was actually. In my family, my grandfather's brother, I always called him uncle, even though he was my grandpa's brother. He was an artist, a real artist, okay? His name was Laurindo. Can you figure out which one he is? Can you spot the artist? Let's see if you're right. It's this one. This one. He's the artist, okay? But a funny story. Let me tell you the story real quick, all right? So when he was born, his mom, my great-grandmother, told his father, my great-grandpa, to go into town and register him, the new baby that they just had. All the births back then were all home births, so, he had to go to town. It was probably like a month after the baby was born, to make sure that the baby was going to survive and all of that. This was a long time ago, right? So my grandpa was going to go into town, and they talked about naming the kid, and they got together and they said, hey, let's name the kid Nelito. That's the name that they wanted to give the kid. And both of them agreed, and my great-grandpa just went on the road to town. On the way he was walking to town, a friend of his just joined him, and then they both start talking, just to pass time. And then my great-grandpa was telling how excited he was to have a new baby boy and everything, and how he was going to go to town and register him and all of that. And then this man comes to my great-grandpa and says, so what's the name of the baby? And my great-grandpa says, oh, it's going to be Nelito. And the guy said, Nelito, that's an ugly name. That's weird. Don't you think? My great-grandpa didn't know what to do, and he said, you should name your kid Laurindo. Another weird name, but Laurindo, he was trying to explain how Laurindo, it's pretty because it means a person crowned with a crown of laurels. Okay, Laurindo. So they kept talking, and by the time my great-grandpa got to town, he was fully convinced that he should change the name of his kid. So he went into the place to, register the kid, and he goes and puts his name as Laurindo. Anyways, he finished that. He had more business to do in town. He comes back home. He forgets about it. He didn't tell my great-grandma. He doesn't tell anyone. And life just moves on, and everybody would call my uncle Nelito for his whole life. Now, when he was 16 years old, he had to make an ID, to get an ID for school. So he went into town to get his birth certificate. And he said, what's your name? My name is Nelito. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, but we cannot find your birth certificate. Are you sure you were born here? He's like, I'm sure, my father told me, right? Then they tried to find, couldn't find it, until they searched for the name of the father and the mother and the date that the father registered him in the birth. And then they found, look, we have everything matches, but the name for the person is Laurindo. This was the first time my uncle found out that his name was not Nelito, but Laurindo. And for the rest of his life, his nickname became Nelito, but his real name is actually Laurindo. But anyways, he was an artist, and here he is. He was just a fun person, like as an artist can be, right? And he had a very eccentric personality and all of that, everything that comes with art. But he made some beautiful art. Here's a few of them that he made, most of this stuff was fruit vases and things like this. Most of it was ultra-realism that he tried to do, and some of it was different. But I remember growing up, I would go to his house, and I would keep looking at all his paintings, because he loved to do details in the paintings. So this painting over here, somewhere close to the bottom, there's a tiny frog. And I remember looking at it, looking for hours and trying to find what the details, what kind of Easter egg my uncle had put it there, It was just so awesome looking at all of it. For a while, he was our teacher for the Adventist school in my town. And it was so amazing because, you got to pay the bill, so that's why he was a teacher. But so then one day he was teaching the students how to look for composition and how to look for shadows. So he began to draw something on the blackboard, and pretty soon by the end of the class, he had put a masterpiece on the blackboard. The next teacher that came in looked at it, and he said, oh, I'm not erasing that. And he couldn't erase it. The next teacher said the same thing. As a matter of fact, that painting stayed there for like weeks, until one student came in, and on a dare, he just erased it, and then they just took it all off. But anyways, he was a very cool guy, He was an artist. But the artist gene skipped me, okay? It did not catch me at all, okay? I've never been artistic at all. However, there was one time back in college where I experimented with art, right? And I remember that every year in college, you're supposed to take electives. So I'm always taking communications elective because I like communication. So this is what I do. So, but I couldn't do any communication electives because that year in specific, the studio was being remodeled. So they couldn't offer any communication classes. So I started looking for one-credit classes that were easy enough for me to get an A. This is all I want. I did not want to put much work into it. So I looked, and I ended up settling for Pottery 101. I thought it was going to be the easiest class in the world. And oh boy, I was wrong about that, Pottery is not easy at all. The first class, I didn't even touch any clay, because we had to learn a bunch of procedures, a bunch of names, different names that I had never heard. Some of them are easy, like, clay. You all know what clay is, right? It's a material that from the ground that is soft when wet, it's hard when dry, and it gets rock solid when it's exposed to red heat or fire. This was easy, but then it started getting kind of weird, Do you know what biscuit means? Or biscuit? It's the clay when you fire it on a heat that is not as hot, and it becomes a little bit more porous. Then he had glaze, not to be confused with Krispy Kreme or anything. This is the glaze you're not supposed to eat, right? Which is a mix of glass mixed with water and clay. And when you apply it to the pottery and you bake it, it becomes shiny, all beautiful. There's scoring. It's when you use tools to mark your pottery. And there's the kiln. Is the oven that you use to fire the pottery. And I learned a lot more. I had to learn all of those to be able to take the class. I was putting more work than I wish I was, I kind of I was duped into it, but I kind of enjoyed it, right? But let me tell you, I was not artistic, so therefore I struggled a lot in the class. The first time I touched clay was the second week of class. And the teacher gave us a block of clay, and I remember putting in the wheel and spinning it and tried to put water and pressure and do all things. I looked to the sides, and let me tell you, I was beside people who had real talent, right? They were able to do great things. They were able to actually make beautiful vases and all of that. And I was trying here. I had to start a few times, but in the end, the only thing I could make was an ugly dish. basically like this. This is not it, though. I tried to get as quick as possible, but it was just an ugly dish, you know? Not round. It was not perfect. Not something that you could actually use in a house. It was basically just a formless, crooked, ugly dish. That's what I did. Nevertheless, I still put it in fire, and I still baked it. And after it was done, I looked at it, and I was so proud of it. I was like, this is my first thing, you know? It's an ugly dish, but you know what? It's mine. You know, it's my dish. I made it, right? It was my ugly piece of pottery. So I kept it. And I kept it for a long time. For years I had it. And until one of the moves I had, somebody bumped it, and it fell on the ground because it was not strong enough. It just shattered in 1,000 pieces, you know. It was not strong enough, but it was not pretty enough. It was not useful at all. But I kept it for so long because it was mine. It was mine piece of pottery. By the end of the semester, I got a lot better, and I was feeling a lot more confident on my skills. You know, I could do an ugly bowl instead of an ugly dish now. You know, but nothing took the excitement I had when I finished that first little dish. Now, the last classroom that we had that semester, the teacher brought a professional potter to speak to us. And she spent, you know, close to an hour talking to us about how it is to be a potter and what kind of work she does and what a day schedule would look like for a professional potter. She even talked about how much she made, you know, as a potter. It was amazing. It was really good. But to me, the most incredible, the part that I liked the best was that at the end of it, she sat behind the wheel. She took a little bit of clay and she started to shape something. And really quick, in a matter of minutes, you know, she had something that was beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful vase. You know, in a matter of minutes, she was able to put something very amazing. A vase that probably anyone here would love to have. You know, she made in those few minutes what I could not do my whole semester. Something beautiful, you know. But because she was an artist, a real artist, she could do it. And it reminded me of Isaiah 64:8 that says, "Yet you, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay, and you are the potter. We are all the works of your hand." And let me tell you, after I struggled to get an A, it was not an A+, it was an A- in that class, but I began to appreciate this verse even more. God being the potter means he's invested in us. He put some time to it. He enjoys working with you. He made us out of clay, and he shaped us into something beautiful. He made us, so he loves his creation. We are created perfect, complete, functional, and most importantly, beautiful. God is the author and creator of our lives. Now today we'll continue our series called Solid Ground. And today we're going to talk about creation. And I titled my sermon, Masterpiece, because we are God's masterpiece. He created us. He loves us. He's invested in us. Our origin is found in the Bible. In the Bible, in the first verse of the Bible, we can see about our origin. From the very beginning, we are met with the answer to the question, where do we come from? Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." There it is. The biblical account tells us that God created all things. He designed and executed a perfect creation of not only earth, but also everything, all the heavens, all the stars, everything was created by God. As children, we were tasked to memorize the days of creations, and I hope you remember those things from childhood. You know, do you remember all of them? Let's see if you remember. What was on day 1? Light, that's right. Day 2? It was firmament, right? Division of the stratosphere and all of that, created wind and all of those things. Day 3? It was a separation between land and water and vegetation. Day 4? The sun and the moon. Day 5, fish and birds. Day 6, animals and humans. And on seventh day, God celebrated the end of his creation and he rested. It must have been something very powerful to be in that presence of God creating everything, because God spoke and light came from him. It became light because he spoke. God spoke and the waters just rushed into place. God spoke and trees came out. God spoke and animals became alive. God spoke and things happened. This is how powerful God is. However, the Bible tells us that when it came to men, it was a little bit different. He slowed down a little bit. Genesis 2:7 says, "Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became living being." Instead of creating man with a command, God took time to create him with his own hands. Same thing to the woman. You know, God took a part of man, a part of the side of man, and made woman. It was different. Men and women were not made by vocal command. They were an intimate design. They were something special and unique, not like everything else. No wonder our bodies are living testimony that we are made not by chance, but by an intelligent designer, an architect who carefully planned and formed you. Psalms 139:13 and 14 says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." Now, it's like a painter, you know, who gets close to an empty canvas. And I can imagine God looking at everything. And if you watch Bob Ross, you know Bob Ross? Yeah, you know, if you watch him, you know how he works, right? He first gets together his paint brushes that he's going to need, all the colors of the palette that he's going to need. And I can see God, you know, doing all of this, getting ready. And then first, what does he do? He works on the background. Make sure things look good on the background. And then he starts putting a little bit of more of like a happy little tree here, a happy little tree there, you know. Just putting some depth into it, maybe a bird. You know, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents, right? So anyways, but once he's done with all the background, now he starts to work on the centerpiece right there, on the masterpiece, you know. Men and women were the masterpieces of God. And when God finished, he rested. Not because he was tired, but because he wanted to take a step back and enjoy his creation. It became a celebration of his masterpiece. Sabbath was a celebration of God's masterpiece. Sabbath was the review of his work, of his final work. Nothing was missing. Everything was just perfect. Perfect. Sabbath today is still a reminder of that first Sabbath. It is a reminder that we didn't appear by chance. We are not here by mistake. But we are here because God is our creator. He finished something beautiful in you. But unfortunately, as we know, sin entered the world and it stained God's perfect masterpiece. We were separated by our creator, from our creator. This leads us to question our very own existence, something that shouldn't have never happened. Questions like, who am I? Starts to appear. Questions like, where did I come from? Or even questions, where I'm going, are common questions between those who find themselves far away from their Creator. If you don't know where you came from, it's because you don't know your Creator. The biblical creation is the answer to all of those questions. Who are you? You are God's masterpiece. That's what the Bible tells us. Where did you come from? You came from God, who formed you with his own hands. That's in the Bible. Where are you going? Well, based on his perfect creation, you should be living in perfect harmony between God and nature. But because of sin, we've been separated and things are not the same. However, the Bible tells us in Revelation 21:6, it tells us that he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new, a new creation. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. So where are you going? According to the Bible, you are going where you should have never left. To be in perfect harmony with God and nature, without sin in the world. Sin stained God's perfect masterpiece. But Jesus washed us with his blood. And God is using this to repaint a new masterpiece in us, to restore us. However, trust me, Satan is not happy about it. He knows it, and he doesn't agree with it. He works really hard so God's children forget who they are, where they came from, and where they are going. Confusion is his final goal. God says, I created you. Satan says, you came from nothing. God says, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Satan says, no, you evolved from lower species. Or he may even say, oh, you were born in the wrong body. Or he may even say, you're better than others. You're superior than somebody else. Those are Satan's lies. God says that he will restore our lives, and you're going to be in the place that you should have never left. And Satan says, there's no future. You're just an accident in the universe, here today and gone tomorrow. These are all lies from Satan, designed to make you drift away from your Creator. So be careful. And not only that, he's working everywhere, because in the world today, if you say you believe in creation and that there's a God who designed you intelligently, you are sometimes seen as lunatic. Why would you believe such a thing? And if you work in science, you're pushed away from scientific circles. You might lose funding, and you might even lose your job because you believe that there's a creator. Most scientists today, they preach the theory of evolution. They preach. They don't teach because, they preach. They're just spreading these lies, right? And they do it as if it was a proving thesis. In effort to completely eradicate God from our schools, the evolution theory has taken place of creation. Many forget that evolution is nothing more than a theory. Just, a supposition or systems of ideas intended to explain something. Now, in this debate between the theory of creation and evolution, I just wanted to let you know right now, I'm not here to debunk the evolution. I'm not going to even try, because, you need to be smarter than me to do this. But let me just tell you this. It's really hard to take serious a theory that keeps moving its goalpost regarding time. It's very hard. A theory that can never be proven or recreated, and above all, a theory that takes more faith than creation to believe of your origins. If someone wants to fight you because of your belief in creation, just remember that God calls us not to be lawyers for him, but he calls us to be witness for him. Just know that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your body is the biggest evidence of a creator there's out there. Biggest evidence. Just choose any body part of your body, and you see how amazing you are and how inadequate the theory of evolution really is. Now, let me just take my hand and take your hand as an example. There are a lot of functional tools out there, but no other is like your hand. Do you know that your fingers and proportion and all of that follows the Fibonacci number sequence, or the golden rule, how some people know it? Do you know, if you're ever a designer, you've heard those things before. It's how they design logos and everything. It pretty much just says the sum of two smalls is equal to the third one. It's confusing. But anyways, they create logos with it. Apple is one. It's very, very famous to do this, because it creates a sort of symmetry that we are very familiar with. Our brains might not even know or realize, but symmetry is just familiar and good and comfortable for us. But anyways, your hand in specific follows those rules follow those rules. Let's take a look at this. So when you look at the bones in your hands, the sum of the smallest two of your fingers, is equal to the length of the third one. And the sum of the second and the third one is equal to the length of the fourth one, with the exception for the thumb that has its own function by itself. But when you look at it, what does that mean? It just means that in your hands right here, everyone here has a perfect balance between strength and dexterity. Perfect balance. Not only that, when you close your hands and you can see that your knuckles, they don't align correctly. And that's on purpose because otherwise you would be bumping on each other. So they don't align on each other. Now, when it comes to the muscles, you don't have muscles in your hand. All the muscles of the hand are in the arm. So your hand is a very slim design. So you're able to hold somebody's hand or hold something in front of you. So very amazing, how it works. Now, your brain uses a lot of energy to control your hands. A lot of it. Because if you think about it, the same hand that can strongly grip a rock is able to hold a tiny piece of paper. As a matter of fact, you can do it all at once. You can grip a bucket with your hand, and at the same time, your fingers can be holding a tiny piece of paper, and your pinky can be holding a plastic bag full of heavy stuff. And you can do this all at once. But not only that, on your other hand, because you have two, right? On the other hand, you can be holding a heavy hammer, but at the same time, gripping a potato chip, a very, very, fragile potato chip. How amazing it is. And let's not even talk about typing, how hard typing is. How can anyone even type? It's because your brain can process moves for your fingers 3 times ahead of your actual moves. Amazing. You have 9 different muscles to control your thumb itself. 9. Because it does so many other things. Not only that, surrounding your hands, there's this wonderful thing called skin, that gives different shades from everybody. Everyone has different shade in their skins. But not only that, it protects you. It knows when something is hot or something cold, so you take out your hand if it's too hot or too cold, And not only that, it does something amazing because if you're wet, it will wrinkle so you can have better grip when it's in wet conditions. Just perfect. Just perfect. Now, I can look at my hand and look at all of those things and just say, this is perfect because God made me like this. God designed me to be like this. However, some look at it and look at the hand and how it moves and says, well, this took thousands of years to evolve into this. But then they start studying a little bit more, and they find all of the functionalities that you can have and how you can grip and have strength on it. And they say, no, not 1,000. You need millions of years of evolution for that. And then they continue to study, and they find out how your hand can adapt if you lose a finger to grip things even without a finger. And it's amazing. How do you do this? They say, okay, no, it's because your hand took millions of years to do this. And they keep studying it, and they look more into it, and they see how amazing your hand is, and every single muscle that gets to it, and how it's connected, and how you can do things together. And they say, no, it will take billions of years to evolve. They keep moving the goalpost, because time, it's not on their side. Pretty soon we're going to be into the trillions of years, because we're just that amazing. The more people find out about who you are, the more amazed they are of how intricate and how complex your body is. And they have to keep putting more and more time because they need more time for that to be evolved, right? But the reality is that you are wonderfully, beautifully and wonderfully made by God. They're never going to be able to fully explain the wonders of your body because you were created by God. You are a masterpiece. You did not evolve. You were created. You are the fruit of the expression of God. Although we might be a little banged up sometimes because of sin, right? A little rough in the edges, Maybe because of sin, we are a little broken inside or ripped to parts. It's okay. That does not take the fact that you are still God's masterpiece. Have you guys heard about this story of this painting? And does anyone know what this painting is? This is the Salvator Mundi painting. It's an amazing thing, This is believed to be a painting from Leonardo da Vinci. He only painted about 20 pieces in his whole life. We only had 15. And when they found this one, now it became 16 of his paintings. This one is painting number 16. Salvatore Munti. You know, the Salvatore Munti was painted, as believed to be painted in the early 1500s. This painting was thought to be lost in the 1600s. But then back in 1958, in London, somebody had a piece and they put it into auction, but nobody thought it was Leonardo's. They thought it was like somebody who copied it because it was badly, damaged. It had overpainting. It was just ugly. But they put it to auction, see if anybody would take it. And in London, only one person gave a bid, an American. He bought this piece for $45. $45. This is how the paint looked like. It did not look like an original at all. But they bought it and they kept it because they liked, religious paintings. So they kept for a long time. Now, back in 2005, they had to, downsize, so they put the painting into auction, and in New Orleans. And the painting was bought by two art dealers, and they paid $1,000 for the paint. $1,000, which is not much. In 58, they bought it for 45 pounds, which was roughly $100 and some, and they sold in 2005 for $1,000. That's, there's almost nothing. But anyways, those two, they saw potential in this painting and said, I don't know, something tells me there might be some more to it. So they took this painting to a restoration expert, this woman over here. This is the actual woman who did it. And this woman put the painting into lots of scanning, just thinking, I'm restoring a copy of an original. That's what she was thinking. But the more she would take, x-rays, CAT scans, and all kinds of scans that they did to the paintings, and as she took the first layer of overpainting that somebody had put throughout the years, and she got to the basic layer of paint, something touched her and said, this is not a copy. This is not original. And there were a few clues that would tell her that this was an original. And from all the clues, there are two clues that I thought was fascinating. Here's the first one. I don't know I hope you can see. Do you see the thumb that has like an overprint in the thumb? They thought it was weird because, it was kind of like the artist, he had made the thumb like this, and then he didn't like, so he painted on top, and then he repainted in a different angle, as if playing with shapes and lighting and composition right there. This is not something that a person who copies a painting does. They just copy what's in there. They don't need to, try it out because they know what it's going to be because it's already there. Now, another thing that they found that was interesting is that everywhere, but mostly around the lips and the eyes, there were little lead segments in the paint, meaning there were pencil markings before the paint was applied. Pencil marks. And they said, listen, a person who does a copy, they don't sketch it before. They just paint. And this was like everywhere else, also the shirt was moved from one side to the other, as if the artist was trying to get all of this. There's a globe that it's holding. Let me show here. There's a little globe that is holding kind of like creation, right? And you can see that on the back, there's like reflection on the hand. It's a little bit blurred. They said, they didn't know how to do this. This looks like a Leonardo, And then they were able to kind of get this and say this was an original, authentic painting from Leonardo da Vinci. And because of that, the world of art just went nuts, because everyone wanted to see this paint now. Everyone wanted to get close to it. Everyone was talking about it. Some people were still skeptical. Is it from him or not? But most people who saw the evidence believed that this was an original Leonardo. Now, that this was seen to be a painting from him, the perceived value of this painting just skyrocketed. And in 2017, not too long ago, it was auctioned off. And can you guess how much it was auctioned off for? Let me show you the auction over here. I have it's a short clip to show you how much it was auctioned off. Here you go.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the Leonardo da Vinci, the Salvator Mundi, the masterpiece by Leonardo of Christ the Saviour, previously in the collections of 3 kings of England. At 90 million, 160 might take it. At 150 million, many places still. 160 is bid, 200. 190 is bid. 200 million is bid. At 250 million is bid. You could be 290, Alex. I thought so. 300 million. 370 million. Back to Francois' client at $370 million, ladies and gentlemen. 400 million. Leonardo Salvator Mundi selling here at Christie's. $400 million is the bid, and the piece is sold.
$450 million with the commissions. This became the most expensive piece of art that has ever been sold in the world by like $150 million. So what makes the difference? What makes the same piece of art that was sold for 45 pounds be sold for $450 million? What's the difference? The answer is the artist. The artist. Now listen, the value of the piece of art is not based on the condition it is found, but on the reputation of the artist. That's the value in it. You may look at yourself as imperfect, as your ugly little dish, right? It's imperfect, maybe a little banged up with life. Maybe you have scratches, maybe you're broken inside, maybe you're not perfect the way you want it to be. But listen, in the light of creation, you will see that you are God's masterpiece. Your value is much more than you can ever imagine. Not because of you, but because you're creator, because the person who made you. You have more value than anything because of your creator. Our sixth fundamental belief of the Seventh-day Adventist Church says, God has revealed in the scripture the authentic and historical account of his creative activity. He created the universe, and in recent six-day creation, the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Thus, he established the Sabbath as a perpetual memory of the work he performed and completed during 6 literal days. That, together with the Sabbath, constituted the same unit of time that we call a week today. The first men and women were made in the image of God as the crowning work of creation, given dominion over the world and charged with responsibility to care for it. When the world was finished, it was very good, declaring the glory of God. Brothers and sisters, you are God's masterpiece. You are the crowning creation of God, the masterpiece of his creation. And he will restore us into our original beauty. You are worth more than you think you are. People might say that you're worth only 45 pounds. Trust me, you're worth 450 billion and more, because of your creator, because who created you. Because when we look at everything around us, when we look at trees, when we look at animals, when we look at our bodies, we cannot say anything else than how great you are, God. Our bodies, everything we have, it's not a matter of who we are, but it's a matter of how great our God is. And I hope that every time you see it, see yourself, see the nature, see things around you, you remember that you are not something else. You're not here just by an accident. You are here because God designed you and he wanted you to be the way you are. You are God's masterpiece. Amen.